Hey, welcome back everybody. That's right, it's time to feed. So here it is, Friday, August 23rd, just about 10:30 in the morning. Temperature is 72 degrees, humidity is about 68 to 70%. It feels absolutely great. In fact, the mornings, we've had temps right around 60 degrees, which is very unusual for this time of year. But then again, the news is saying it's kind of a false fall. We have actually had a lot less rain over the last 2 weeks, which has been a good thing because I just cleaned out the mixing barrel a few days ago and it looks like it stayed pretty clean. So it always retains probably about 2 gallons of water or so, which is fine. Before I use it, I'll fill it up to about 10 gallons, let it circulate, and then pump out that water just so there's no stagnant water in there for when I go to mix the sugar water. And if I keep looking down, there's a reason for that. About a week ago, within the last 2 weeks for sure, coming out here, in fact right here, so hives right about here, came across about a 2.5 foot copperhead. So I no longer wear snake boots. That's a recent change too. I've moved on to something a little more comfortable. But no kidding, out of the 7 or 8 years I've had hives out here, I've worn snake boots the entire time, never encountered anything remotely poisonous or dangerous. And the moment I get rid of my snake boots, no kidding, the same day I get rid of them, I come out and find a copperhead, which is crazy. Let's do a quick drive-by of the hives. Pretty nice activity that I'm seeing so far on most of them. Moderate activity, nothing crazy or busy like this spring when the flow is on. But yeah, today's plan, I'm gonna mix up about 40 gallons of feed in 2 iterations. Feed the first half of the hives, the first 8, and then feed the second 8. I'm down to 16 currently. I combined a few, as y'all saw in a previous video if you watched it down here. I combined a few just because I determined they were queenless, and then gave them some time to produce a queen, which didn't really seem to be happening, and then decided it was time to combine them just so I didn't develop a laying worker situation, or I think I had one that was a laying worker and I just didn't want it to become even worse. And then I lost 2 over the last few weeks, up to a month maybe. So down to 16. Which is okay, I'm fine with that. And in fact, I have decided to do the right thing here in a few months, and if I need to, I'll combine some hives so they can survive the winter, because as folks say, it's better to combine hives than lose them. Yeah, the plan today, I'm gonna mix up about 20 gallons, crack open the first 8 hives just to expose the division board feeder and fill them up, which based off the previous video of feeding back in June, that took about 5 minutes, but that was for 10 hives. So this should take even less, right? And then I'll do the same for the second half. And I don't remember the number, but one of the hives down towards the end, towards the second half, it's the hive that I put 10 shallow frames into a medium box. Again, if you haven't watched those videos, very interesting, because I cannot pry that box apart. So what I'm thinking about doing on the topic of equalizing, so to include that hive that has the 10 shallow frames, I have 2 other hives that have full supers of probably funny honey, because I fed them, right? So I have 2 other hives that have full supers, so that's 30 frames in total, 16 hives. I'm going to equalize the medium boxes by dispersing those full frames amongst all the hives, so I know they at least all have 2 to maybe 3 frames of food, and then in addition to what I'm about to feed them. And my setup is pretty simple if I haven't showed you that before. I just run the garden hose out along with an extension cord out to the feeder area, supply them with fresh water, electricity for the sump pump, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't get any more simple. And then if you haven't seen the previous videos, I have a dedicated hose hooked up to the feeder barrel, which is a 3/4 inch hose with a 1 inch adapter and a 1 inch nozzle on the far end. I'll show you that later in the video, but this works extremely well. And truth be told, I've not used it as much as I thought I was going to. Fed them in June. The bees did a fantastic job with storing a lot of that food and using it as needed, and they no kidding drained the 2.5 gallon division board feeders in a week. So considering it costs $150 give or take to feed all the hives, I just could not see myself doing that weekly to the tune of about $600 a month to feed the hives. But given the time of year, again, late August, I'm anticipating a pretty nice fall flow considering how this year is gone. So this supplementing feeding, in addition to the fall flow, which should start maybe sometime in the next 30 days, this should get them looking real good for the winter. And that's the whole idea at this point, is what you're doing now only helps the hives survive the winter, to include treating, which I just started my fall treatment plan, which is oxalic acid once every 5 days for 4 or 5 times until complete. So that should take me through mid-September. And then feed now, maybe feed in about a month after I gauge how the fall flow is going. And that's pretty much it, because the bees that are being produced now are essentially your winter bees, which is why it's important to feed them and treat them. Okay, very, very long introduction. To wrap things up, so feed today, which is Friday, and then I plan on getting into a few of them tomorrow or Sunday for a variety of reasons. One hive, the hive that has the full medium box with shallow frames, I have not been able to get into the brood chamber since about mid-June. So it's been like 2 full months. So I plan on doing that later. And another reason I want to get into a few of the hives is I want to see if feeding them changes their temperament. Check out the previous video. I'll link it in the description, or maybe up here or here or something. They were extremely aggressive, which is very unusual. 1 or 2 hives being aggressive, kind of normal, tolerable. Every single one, something was wrong, something was off. I attribute that to the weather and possibly not having any food coming in. So again, my idea with feeding them today and then getting into them about 24 to 48 hours later is really to see if having a direct food source changes their temperament to where they're more tolerable. And it's just experimental at this point. But very long introduction. I think this is a record for me, about 9 minutes. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the channel, please subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and we literally make pennies. I'll share a screenshot at some point on social media somewhere. We literally make pennies per video. It's more of a hobby. It's more of us enjoying sharing our passion for beekeeping in an effort that something we share maybe helps somebody out there. Okay. That's enough for me. Let's get to it. Let's feed the hives today. And this will be one of 2 or 3 parts, so please watch and enjoy. If you like it, give it a thumbs up, and again, subscribe if you could. All right, got the barrel rinsed out and filled up, and to make 1.3 to 1 feed, I need just around 12 gallons of water for 75 pounds of sugar. And I decided before I start feeding the first half of the hives, I wanted to do a few quick things. I wanted to pop the top on the hives and then mark them, the ones that have full supers. And then I was thinking about it and considering the mess that one of these down here will be, the one with the medium box with the shallow frames, I'm actually going to get the smoker lit, get into them first. In fact, I think it's the one with the brick right here. I'm going to get into them first, just because I know it's going to be a mess. Get that out of the way. And then when I go to make the second batch of feed for the second half of the hives, it should go pretty smooth, and mainly to just minimize delays with messing with whatever hive that is. I think it's number 7. So yeah, I'm just gonna get the smoker lit, like I said, pop the tops, mark the hives that have full supers so I can figure out which ones I need to get into later to equalize the other supers. And then I have 1, 2, yeah, I have 2 single deeps down on the front end here that don't have supers, and I have, let's see, yeah, I need to figure that out as well. So a few things to figure out, but that's just how beekeeping goes. All right, stay tuned as I do a few things. I'll share it with you. And I just wanted to show y'all, in case you haven't seen the previous video. So this is hive number 1. They have 2 mediums. I added that top medium a while ago after I discovered this box here is just completely full, which is great. So you can see very, very, very nice food stores and a ton of bees. So after I feed them this time around, I'm curious how much more work they do with the top box, because there's a few frames that are full and a few frames that aren't. So they have the space to store food stores, and they have space to draw out some wax, because there's a few frames up there that don't have any wax at all. I'm going to get into the other hives, like I said, possibly this one and the next one, to check on their supers, and then just kind of form a plan as I go to redistribute the food stores. But yeah, they're looking very nice. And my thought with that, with number 1 being a pretty strong hive, they can draw out the top medium, and then I can add that medium to a single deep that was probably a late season swarm, or just a swarm I call it, that has just needed time and food and energy to draw out the frames in the bottom box, and then they just would most likely run out of time to draw out a new medium box, a box with 10 frames with a new foundation. So my idea was add a medium to the stronger hives, let them do all the heavy lifting, and then move that box over to one of the single deeps so they can have some extra space in food stores for winter survival. All right, this is hive number 2. So the first frame, not so much, but the second frame, and then the third frame, and you can just see the concentration of bees in the top box. They're a pretty healthy colony. So I'll mark them with a brick as well, just as a way to identify the hives that have a pretty full top box. And I'm pretty sure there's 1, 2, 3, and then number 7 down the way, so maybe 4, which is pretty good. So based off what I said in the introduction, that could be 40 frames, give or take, for 18 hives. So not to do math in public, but that's about what, it's 2 to 3 frames per hive I could redistribute throughout for the hives that have just really not that great food stores. But anyway, okay, so we're moving along pretty quickly here, which is a good thing. So let me check this one, and then I'll spend the majority of my time down the way in number 7, because I know that's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be pretty messy to get the shallow frames unstuck. And then I'll take a look in the bottom box for the first time again in 2 months, but I'll show you that here in a second. All right, down here at number 5, that's right, it's a broken frame. Sucks. Yeah, down here at 5, I am pretty darn sure this is the other box before I get into, I think it's number 7, that has a full honey super. Yep, sure enough, number 5. And a good way to tell is all the bird comb on top. All right, so same thing I said before, I'll mark this one with a brick, and I'm pretty confident that's the last one that has a full box. It is nice to see they are a lot more calm than they were last time. please check out that video. The B-roll footage, the introduction footage of that was this hive in the afternoon, which was the first hive I got into for the second part of that day. The first and the last. I mean, they were just all over me. So I think the weather has a lot to do with that, like I said in that video a few times. But let's get into the one I keep referencing, show you what kind of mess that is, and then we'll start feeding them here shortly. Yeah, check out all that propolis. That's what 2 months of propolis looks like. All right, so again, in the previous video, it didn't look like they were doing a whole lot with the top box. I may or may not have said why I added that box, and in case I didn't, the reason I added this top medium, or a second medium, was because this hive was bearding very heavily in the late afternoon. And the reason I know that is because I would come out, or that's typically the time I would come out to treat the colonies, which is typically about 7 p.m. or so. So they were just bearding extremely heavy. So I figured if they needed a little extra space, easy way to provide that would be in the form of a medium box. But it really doesn't look like they've done a lot with that box. So I'm just gonna go through it real quick, double check that the queen's not up in there, and then I'll set that box on top of one of the singles to give them some space once I feed them, to draw out some wax if they need to, or create some food stores. But this is going to be messy and kind of a pain, but that's what you get for adding 10 shallow frames to a medium box, thinking the bees weren't going to fill in the gap and just completely seal it up. So we'll see. If you can't tell, I have not been looking forward to this, but I need to get into the bottom box to look at them for the first time, and then really to access the feeder. So stay tuned. All right, this is the first time in over 2 months I've been able to get the top box off, and that's why right there. That is all the comb and honey that was sealing the 2 boxes together because of the space between shallow frames and the bottom box. So here's a first look at number, I think it's number 7. Yep. At number 7's bottom box. I'm gonna clean this up and go through them for the first time. Take a look at the brood. Show you all that, of course. Hopefully they're still queen right. Otherwise, this would be a huge laying worker situation at this point, but I don't think that's the case, which is why I've been comfortable with not getting into them. But we'll see here in a second. All right, just got the feeder out. So this is a first look. No kidding, a first look. Actually got some brood right here, just uncapped. And then on this side, got some capped brood. Let's go through the first few frames together, just so we can discover any surprises at the same time. Okay, well that's good to see. Yeah, they actually have nice food stores, no kidding, right? But yeah, on this side, capped brood, of course, surrounded by some larvae. And then if we just trace it out, let's see, very, very small larva. But you're looking for eggs, of course. I don't see any on that side just because I think they ran out of space, or the queen ran out of space. And on this side, yep, we have eggs. So they are queen right. And like I said in the previous videos, that is where I would stop. But considering I have not been in this hive in 2 full months, no kidding, the last time was around June, early June. But they look like they are doing just fine. I'm still going to go through every single frame. I'll show you the queen, of course, if I can find her. But already able to determine their queen right. They just needed some cleanup, as y'all saw. So stay tuned and I'll show you anything interesting. All right, very last frame. I have not seen the queen just yet, so let's see if she's on this one. Ton of eggs. So whatever queen they have, whether that's still the marked one. Oh yeah, oh check this out. This is that red queen. Let me cage her. We'll get her freshened up. So no kidding. 2022 queen. Still doing an excellent job. Yeah, we'll get a fresh red mark on her. I forgot I moved her down here at some point. Alright, I was able to get her freshened up a little. Show you that if she turns around. Wasn't trying to do too much just because she's doing such a fantastic job. Don't want to run the risk of killing her. Come on now, turn around. Let's see that new red dot. There we go, maybe. Anyway, get her released here in a second. Alright. Hopefully she makes her way out of the cage quickly. Some of them take their time. Alright, there we go. It's looking good. Just a good look at her. And there she goes. Alright, there you go, folks. That is one of the many reasons you don't put a full medium box on a very strong colony with shallow frames, because they produce a ton of bridge comb, cappet, and because I fed them, I don't know if it's funny honey, so obviously not going to extract it. I'll just refeed that to the bees by open feeding them. I'll show you that here in a second. I just moved the cooking sheet further away from the bee yard. So 7 is looking great, and that's pretty cool. That is the only hive that has a red queen, so a queen from last year that's still doing an excellent job. So that's pretty neat. Slight change of plans with feeding. So I have 4 hives that have completely full supers. So there's really no need to feed them because they have 30 pounds of food available to them. So now I only have to feed 12 hives. All the hives again have 2.5 gallon division board feeders. So I'm gonna have to do some recalculating because I have a feeling that's going to affect the amount of water I have in the barrel, whether that's more or less. So 12 times 2.5. So I need about 30 gallons of feed. I have just enough water in there to make 20 gallons. So I'll have to add a little more water, and that'll probably affect how much sugar I use. I'll redo the math here in a second, but as soon as I figure that out, I'm gonna whip up some feed and then get all the hives fed at once. So they should be good until probably about mid-September, which is usually when we start getting another nectar flow. Yeah, that's it for now. Again, stay tuned and we'll transition into the feeding portion of this video. Before we go, check out the amount of bridge comb, capped honey, nectar, funny honey, whatever you want to call it. Check out how much this colony made in between the shallow frames and the brood chamber. Alright, so as suspected, feeding less hives, change the ratio of water and sugar. So instead of needing about 12.5 gallons of water, I need 9. So it's right below the 10 mark. And then instead of mixing 3 full bags of sugar, I'm gonna mix 2.5. So 9 gallons is about 75 pounds. 2.5 bags of sugar is about 62 pounds. And that comes out to a 1.2 ratio of sugar and water, which is what I want. I don't want a true 1-to-1. I still want a little thinner to mimic natural nectar a little more, and with the idea that'll stimulate some brood rearing so I can have as many winter bees produced over the next few months rolling into winter. Okay, so enough of me yapping. Let's get started with mixing some sugar water and get the hives fed. I'm still going to do that in 2 iterations. I'll show you everything that's semi-interesting, and again, that'll be it for late August. Alright, I've let the mixer run for about 30 minutes, and it's still running, so that's a good sign. I think it cuts off around 45 minutes. It's got a thermo heat detection to where it just shuts off automatically. So I don't want to do that again because then you have to let it cool off for 30 to 45 minutes. So I'm just gonna pull the plug, literally, and man, hard to do with one hand. Give this about 5 minutes just to settle so we can check the consistency, and then just kind of go from there. And if it looks good, turn everything back on, turn on the hose, flip the ball valve, and then feed half of the hives, and then rinse and repeat for round 2 later this afternoon. All right, 5-minute timer just went off. Let's see how this is looking. Might be a little milky just because it hasn't settled for too long. I don't know if it's 100% necessary to give it 5 more minutes. I don't think it is. So let's get this thing fired up. But first I'm gonna go crack the hives open to expose the division board feeders. We'll get this thing fired up and then feed the first 6. I'm telling y'all, if you have quite a few hives and you're looking for an easy way to feed them, this is it. This is probably the best thing I've done this year as far as just making stuff easier for myself. A lot less lifting, a lot less aggravation, that's for sure. And honestly, it is pretty darn easy and quick. And especially once you have the feed mixed up, actually feeding the hives right now, I mean, it does not get any easier than this. It really doesn't. Especially to feed them 2.5 gallons. Shoot, overflowed that one. 2.5 gallons of feed. So the camera has been rolling for 2.5 minutes. So I'm gonna say 3 to 3.5 minutes to feed 6 hives, 2.5 gallons each, which is 15 gallons of feed. Compared to what I was doing a few years ago, I mean, it's just incredible. All right, we are about done and ready to make the second batch. Oops. All right, a little overflow, nothing wrong with that. Alrighty, here we go for round 2. Got about 9 gallons of water in the barrel. We're gonna add half a bag and then 2 other bags for a total of about 62 pounds of sugar. So 75 pounds of water for 9 gallons to make, again, like a 1.2. It's a little thinner than 1-to-1. And then letting the sump pump run for about 30 minutes seemed to be just fine. The first time I used it, I let it go way too long in hindsight. Really no need to let it run for 45 minutes. 30 minutes seems to be just fine. And if you have any concerns about using a sump pump, this is a 3/4 inch Vevor pump bought off Amazon. I think I caught it at a really good time because I paid about 60 bucks back in late May. And I looked recently and I think they're up to 120 for some reason. So I would just check back periodically. I definitely wouldn't pay $120. $60 is pretty good, especially for what you're using it for. So here we go. Just do a 30-minute timer, and that seems to be pretty good for mixing sugar water. Quick update, it looks like the pump shut off maybe after about running for 12 minutes this time, 30-ish minutes before. So I think the one thing that's consistent with the pump is it can't really run for more than 45 minutes in a pretty close proximity to each other. And the reason I say that is because I shut it off for a little bit and turned it back on for 3-ish minutes or maybe 4 minutes to feed the hives. So I'm gonna let it just completely cool off for the better part of an hour, which is good timing because I have a few things to do with the family real quick. And then when I come back later this afternoon, maybe about 2:30, it should be good to go. And we'll get the rest of the hives fed for late August. Always something, but again, this is only the second time I've used the pump, so that's just something I need to keep in mind. And then whenever the next time is, maybe I'll reduce the mixing time frame to about 20 minutes just to give myself even more time total, so I don't have to deal with about a 45-minute delay to let it cool down, of course. So no big deal, no rush. That is the one nice thing about keeping bees as a hobbyist, is I am on my own time and there's really no rush to do things. So I'll be back soon to resume part 2 of feeding. All right, as promised, I'm back. It's just after 3 o'clock. Pump's been off for probably about an hour or maybe just a little more than that. So once I plug it in, it should start up just fine. But before I do so, let's check the consistency of the sugar water, more out of curiosity, because it only ran, that's pretty good. It only ran for about 12 minutes, I think. 12 minutes or so. So I'm gonna let it run for about 17 minutes before I start popping the hives apart and exposing the division board feeder to feed them, just to let this batch mix for a full 30 to be consistent with both batches. And that should give me plenty of time to fill up the remaining 6 hives. And that's it for today. So plug this thing back in, 17-minute timer, and we'll get started on the second round of feeding. All right, I figured there'd be a little bit of a frenzy considering we're in a dearth and leaving this much comb and honey exposed, but good Lord, they are gonna make short work of this today. Pretty impressive to see. All right, the start of the second half of feeding. Had a few technical difficulties with the pump, but again, second time using it, so still trying to learn the sweet spot as far as run time goes, with just how long you need it to run so it mixes well. But anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes seems to be okay. That's it. All right, that does it for me, folks. I managed to get practically every drop of feed, minus a few gallons, maybe a gallon, out of the feeder. And I'm not really sure, I don't think my calculations are off, but this happened last time. I always end up with a little excess to the tune of 1, 2, 3 gallons extra. I'm really not sure how that happens, but I'm going to try my luck with an open feeding setup right here, which is very close proximity to the bee yard. Let's do one last look out in the yard for today. I think by scraping all that honeycomb off of number 7, the space in between the shallow frames and the deep box, I think that resulted in the hives just waking up. This is the most activity I have seen, and this looks like spring, really. It looks like we are in the middle of a nectar flow. And let's take another quick look for today to show you what exactly I mean. It is pretty cool to see this much activity, especially this time of year when not much is really blooming. But again, when you provide an abundance of food, this is what happens. They are making short work of all that comb and honey. That should be bone dry by tomorrow. Pretty cool to see, especially, I'm sure all the hives are chowing down on that food source right there, which ultimately just brings a little bit more food back to the hives. But yeah, they're all fed. So I'm gonna get out here as early as tomorrow or Sunday to see a few things. One, just how much food they've taken in over the last 24 to 48 hours. And 2, to see if having an immediate food supply in the form of the division board feeder causes a direct positive change to their temperament. I really hope it does, in combination with the weather, because the weather lately has been extremely nice. It's been this false fall is what they call it, almost like a false spring. The weather's been extremely tolerable, does not feel like summer, but in about a week I think it's gonna feel like summer again. All right, that's it for today. Somewhat of a long video, or long part one of the video. Stay tuned for the second half as early as tomorrow or as late as Sunday when I get into the hives, like I said, just to check on a few things, and that will most likely just be it for the month of August. All right, as promised, here it is the following day. It's Saturday, August 24th, right after 11:30. Temperature is about 80 degrees, humidity is 74%. I don't know if this is going to come up on camera, but there is a lot more activity, flight activity, in the backyard than normal. And let me just pan around, see if we can pick up on any of it. So flight activity coming from over here, which is a bit unusual, and they're all going this way, give or take. And I wonder if my open feeding has created a little bit of a frenzy with, well, yep, I'd say so, because there's a ton of bees down there. I'm gonna put my veil on and my gloves, and let's go check this out together. I have a feeling, yeah, the open feeding may have caused a little bit of a frenzy, and whether that's with my hives or neighboring hives, you know, kind of TBD at that point. But yeah, let's go check that out, take a look at the hive entrances. I imagine they're probably going to be pretty busy, a lot of activity. Take a look at all the comb I scraped off number 7, see what the bees are up to that with. I imagine that'll be pretty busy and a little drier today. I'll probably move it around with the hive tool, and then I might pop open 1 or 2 hives just to see how much feed they've consumed in the last just shy of 24 hours, and that's pretty much it for today. So let's go do that and see how things are looking. All right, here we go. Let's see what kind of chaos this open feeding station has created. Okay, well that's pretty darn interesting. I imagine there's that many bees right here because that's where I cleaned out the barrel. I don't know if I showed you all that, but yeah, that's where I just kind of clean out the excess sugar water from the barrel. It's very diluted, so, and okay, maybe that's the chaos, not so much on the feeding station just yet. And okay, yeah, pretty nice activity out here. Let's walk around, take a look at the front entrances, like I said. Man, I may have said this yesterday, but it's looking like spring. Seems like they were a little hungry. All right, one last thing before I pop open a few hives. Let's go take a look at all this comb. That's right, I need to get this medium box added too. Oh wow. Not a whole lot of bees on this today, and it looks like they've picked this thing dry. Like I said, I'm gonna take a hive tool, just kind of move some stuff around, and probably discard it after today. Wow, they made short work of that. All right, I'm just gonna add this medium box that has some drawn comb to number 12. And I'll explain why here in a second once I finish up. So for the first reason, it's because they're in a deep, single deep. And the fall flow should be coming very soon. In fact, there's some goldenrod that is on the verge of blooming right here in the neighborhood. So I can only imagine how the rest of the county's looking. Probably pretty good. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on them, kind of see what they do with this. Between the sugar water that was provided, and again the fall flow that's about to start. So let me show you this real quick before I completely finish things up. And of course I didn't bring a flashlight, so hopefully this comes up. But no kidding, these feeders were completely full yesterday, and it looks like they've used about half of it already. So that's pretty interesting. So like I said in the intro, I'm just going to pop the top on a few stronger hives, mainly the first one and maybe this one here, and see how much feed they've used in about 24 hours. This is number 16. It's the hive in the very first position. This was the hive from last week's video. I mean, as soon as you open them up, they were just all over me. All right, not as much as the previous hive, which was number 12, I believe, the one I added the medium box to. That's pretty impressive. They used half the feeder already. They're using it, just not as much. So with that said, let's check this other single deep and then the one next to it, and that'll be it for today. All right, this is number 19. I mean, they have a nice amount of bees. I'm gonna be quick. I mean, look at that concentration. That's nice. And they've used about the same amount as number 16 down in the first position, which is probably about an inch, maybe an inch and a half's worth. So they're using it, and that's what you want to see. Let's check the one next to it. It has a medium box on, and yeah, that'll be it. But no kidding, that's a good sign. All right, this is the one right next door. This is number 11. Noticing a little bit more of a theme. Oh, that's not true. They're about maybe 2 inches down, so they're using it pretty well too. Hopefully they're storing it, or just using it for whatever they need. All right, all good things. The bees are definitely using the feed. There's an old adage, they'll use what you give them if they need it. Paraphrasing, but something like that. Cool, that does it for me today. All right, there you have it, folks. Kind of figured out what all the activity was. That's where I drained the mixer barrel, so not much of a surprise. There are some bees on the open feeder, so that's kind of cool. The bees are using the feed, as you all saw. And that does it for me. So hey, check it out. I've tried to post content on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesday being a preview video, just something fun using the GoPro editing software, and then Thursday being the full video of the hive inspections or just whatever I'm up to. But I've decided to slow down a little bit, and this will be the last video for a while, probably for the next month or two. Or I might just transition to maybe just a video a month or something like that. But I just wanted to let y'all know that's the plan. So if you see basically a decrease in videos, that's the why. But I do appreciate everybody that subscribes. Again, if you like the videos, give it a thumbs up. As usual, you're always welcome to share our content with your friends and family via social media, or just however you choose to share our videos. We really hope that the content we share is helpful. And this is just how we keep bees. These are our techniques, our practices, the things we do for our bees. You are more than welcome to try them yourself if they work for you. That's fantastic. Again, we're in Jacksonville, North Carolina, so the eastern part, the coastal part of the state. So of course, wherever you keep bees, if you have similar climate, some of our techniques might work for you. But if your climate is a lot different, like if you're out west or Midwest or up north or very far south, obviously some things might be slightly different with techniques and times of year to do certain things, right? But anyway, we appreciate everybody that subscribes. I've said it before, we literally make pennies, no kidding, pennies per video. Like, there's no exaggeration to that, okay? YouTube is definitely not a for-profit thing for us. We do it to share just our passion for beekeeping. It really started with me choosing a way to document hive inspections, and then it turned into just a little more than that, because I just couldn't find myself, or I couldn't see myself keeping a notepad or notes or something for like each individual hive. That was something that was taught in bee school years ago when I went through, and not saying it's a bad technique. If it works for some people, that's great, but I just wanted digital content I could look back on in the event that I just wanted to see how something went in a hive, or how the brood looked, or, you know, if they were queen right, which you can do that with notes, but I don't know. I thought videos would be more fun, and then I decided to share them, and apparently there's a small population of people that enjoy our content. All right, hey, that's it for me. Slight rambling. Sometimes I get a little talkative, but it comes from a good place. Let's do one last traditional drive-by of the hives, and that will pretty much do it for us for summer. So stay tuned and check us out in the fall. Hopefully we get a nice fall flow, and that'll make for some pretty cool videos to share with y'all. All right, see y'all then.